Everybody is going to make a career mistake at some point in time or another. And no matter how much I get up on a soapbox and preach about all these mistakes that people make, you're probably still going to make them yourself. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 6 career mistakes that you're probably going to learn the hard way. Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff, and today I want to share with you some of the most common career mistakes that I see people making during my coaching calls. So listen up if you're early in your career and you want to avoid some of these mistakes, and at least be able to recognize some of the mile markers as they come at you. But before we get into that, if you're interested in more career-related content just like this directly from a corporate recruiter and a career coach, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So full disclosure, I've probably made a few of these mistakes myself in my career. And honestly, a lot of the material that I get for this channel is stuff that I've done in my past or some people that I personally know who have made certain mistakes and then try to learn from them. So let my experiences be a lesson to all of you, and hopefully you can avoid some of this pain as you go through your own career. So let's break down some of these common career lessons that you'll probably end up learning the hard way yourself. The biggest lesson you'll often learn is something that you won't know until it's much later in your career, and oftentimes it might be too late. It's that you're going to make a critical mistake somewhere early in your career, and you're not going to realize it until years later. Now, it could be something as simple as staying in a job for too long or overstaying your welcome. Or it could be that you didn't respond to a recruiter one time for an amazing job opportunity because you were either scared or too comfortable. Or it could be that you accepted a job offer that wasn't the right fit for you. Or maybe you moved to a certain part of the country that wasn't great. Or maybe you didn't move to a certain part of the country because you didn't want to make the change, but it might have represented an entirely new career path that you left unrealized. And let's face it, how many people late in their career have discovered that they focused way too long on a certain thing, a certain job type, a certain career vertical, and then they realized that it wasn't resonating with them, and they waited too long to make a change out of it, and it became much more difficult. And it's really easy with the benefit of hindsight to say, gosh, I wish I could go back and tap my 28-year-old version on the shoulder and say, why don't you change careers now? It's not that big of a deal. And at the time, it might not seem so obvious, but we often don't know those things until much later in our careers. And that's oftentimes what happens in career coaching. Somebody will come to me and say, I'm just not happy with how I'm progressing. Something doesn't feel right, and I don't know why I'm stuck. And I can almost always go back and pinpoint where exactly you went off the rails with your career. So expect a future version of you to have an epiphany at some point in time and wish that they could tap you on the shoulder today. And this is especially true if you're contemplating a career change and you're not sure if the timing is right. The second major lesson you might learn the hard way is that loyalty rarely pays off. And I found this one out the hard way myself. Earlier in my career, I joined a company where I was supposed to develop under a senior leader who was supposed to retire in 18 months. Of course, 18 months came along, the senior leader didn't retire, business as usual, and so I kept on trying to prove myself. 18 months turned into 2 years, turned into 3 years, turned into 4 years and 5 years, and it became fairly obvious that the senior leader had no intention of leaving. But my mistake was I stayed in that role too long. I was loyal to the leader, I was loyal to the organization, and I felt like if I would just pay my dues, eventually I would get there. And guess what? That dangling carrot never came for me, and I eventually had to leave the organization. And the most dangerous part about this is that because I stayed in this role for so long, the rest of the market moved beyond me. And I came out into the open job market noticing that all of my peer group had moved into these leadership roles, and here I am starting with another individual contributor role at a different company, and having to start the clock over again. So they were progressing off in their career, and here I'm now stuck 4 or 5 years behind the rest of my peer group, not only with just responsibility and level, but also with compensation. I was significantly behind the market because of that critical mistake. And taking that first lesson into account, it's easy to see how my career went off track because I was too loyal, stayed in a company for too long, and let the leadership career path pass me by for a lot longer than it should have. And it's kind of an extension of this. Something that I learned the hard way, and you probably will too, is that hard work does not lead to promotions. I paid my dues. I put a lot of hours in. I did the hard work that I thought was necessary to impress, and all it got me was the dangling carrot pushed further and further away. Furthermore, you may feel the pressure to put in all these hours because you may think that that's what's expected of you, especially if you work for a workaholic boss. I had another boss like that myself, where she used to work 12-hour days. And if I didn't keep up pace, I felt like I wouldn't get recognized and ultimately wouldn't get promoted. Here I was working 12 plus hours a day, sometimes coming in on Saturdays because I felt like that's what was needed or required to move to the next level. And guess what happened there? The plant ended up shutting down about a year and a half after I joined the organization. So all that hard work and all those hours trying to impress my boss never led to a promotion, and it only led to me having to look for a new job. So the moral of the story is stop working so many long, hard hours, because it's not the person who works the most hours that gets promoted. It's the person who works the smartest. Working the smartest doesn't mean being necessarily even the best at your job. It means working on projects that your boss and your boss's boss care about. Because if you're working on things that they don't care about, but you think are impressing, the chances are your name's not being brought up in the closed door down the hall. Or if it is, it might not be brought up in the context that you're hoping for. But what does get you promoted is those highly visible projects, and then more importantly, letting people know about it. And that's another mistake that a lot of people make. You have two choices. You can either learn the rules of the game and participate, or you can sit on the sidelines and watch the promotions go to other people. But part of the game is advocating for yourself to the right people. And here's a little clue: the right person is not often your boss. Your boss is not making the decisions on who gets promoted. It's your boss's boss. So you have to figure out ways to get in front of your boss's boss and be very visible. Because listen, you have to be your own advocate. Nobody else in your organization is going to be advocating for you in regards to this. If you want to be the CEO of your career, you have to wear multiple hats, and one of those is your marketing department. So you have to put together campaigns to market how effective you are inside of a company, inside of your department, inside of your job, also on the open market when you're in interviews. But if you're not somebody that cares about progressing through your career and you're happy with the level that you're at, this probably doesn't pertain to you. But if you're somebody that's interested in moving up in an organization, you have to stop being so stubborn. Now, in this last one, we talked about working on the right projects and the right visibility with the right people. And that's going to be a core component to getting promoted and moving through your career. And expanding on this, being really good at a specific thing can be a competitive advantage in your career. However, relevant skills matter more. And here's the thing: employers will value a certain skill until they don't. You can have a boss or work on a specific project where they value a certain skill that you may possess, or they may send you off and retrain you on a certain thing because they need it at that point in time. But when the employer no longer needs it, you're no longer relevant with those skills. The same thing goes for, you could be really good at a certain thing, and then you leave the organization and go to another place, and you realize that the industry or the other companies in the industry don't value that same skill the way your previous employer did. And you can find yourself with a resume full of skills that nobody cares about anymore. And what happens is you get stuck, you end up panicking, and eventually you end up settling for a job beneath where you really should be. And inevitably that one low quality job leads to another low quality job, which then leads to another one, and now your resume has some serious issues. So it's me, I'm focusing on very relevant skills that most employers care about, and not just my specific employer. So the key here is relevant skills that are highly in demand by more than one employer. And the last major lesson you're probably going to learn the hard way, and this one is particularly painful and relevant over the last 18 months or so with all of the layoffs. It's that you're only as good as what you've done last, or in other words, what have you done for me lately? And this one's a particularly bitter pill to swallow, because you'll think, hey, I just knocked it out of the park with this major project last year. The employer loves me. I have a lot of goodwill built up, and that'll probably get you a couple of months here or there. The reality is if they don't feel that you're contributing anymore, or that it's been a little while since you've contributed, more importantly, they don't think that you can contribute in the future, or they don't have plans for your skills to contribute in the future, then you're probably going to find yourself on a list that you don't want to be on. So unfortunately, the goodwill that you build up is typically very short-lived. And that's why the concept of loyalty is so jarring. People feel that they've put in all this great work, they should be recognized, they've built up a lot of goodwill with the right people, only to find out that their name is on a layoff list, and they're completely baffled by it. Because as cold and as cutthroat as it may seem, senior leaders only care about what you can produce tomorrow, not necessarily what you're producing today. And that's why you have to act like the free agent of your career and always be looking out for yourself first. Listen, it is not a dirty word to put yourself first in your career and an employer second. But make sure you do it smart, and make sure you develop all the necessary hats that you need to. And that's what acting like the CEO of your career is. Now, if you're ready to start reclaiming control and learning how to act like the CEO of your career, I actually created a free newsletter that you should check out. And in it, I share concise, actionable tips on how to reclaim control, how to approach your career with more strategy, and how to finally take ownership of it. Keep in mind, it's absolutely free, so make sure you sign up for that. that. And of course, if you want to pinpoint where you went wrong in your career and how to solution for it, I also offer some private one-on-one coaching. You can reach me through my website for that. All right, so hopefully you don't have to use the School of Hard Knocks to learn some of these lessons. Keep an eye out for them as you're going through your career, and you'll avoid a lot of pain. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.